As a youth worker and as a youth work researcher now, I think the question about outcomes, what are the outcomes of youth work, is a really hard one. And I think I would like to avoid a simple answer. And that doesn't mean that youth work is not of benefit to young people. It has an enormous benefit to young people, also to groups, also to communities. And I think to find the outcomes, we need to talk with young people, to ask young people what they think they get out of being in youth work. But I think we also need to talk to people who've been involved in youth work when they were younger, reflecting back, what did it bring? What did it contribute to them? Now, from various processes, including in defence of youth work, storytelling process, we find really compelling evidence that young people get a sense of community, a sense of feeling supported, of being encouraged to think critically about issues. We might think widely about social justice and social change. Do young people in youth work settings get encouraged to think critically about gender relations, for example, think about attitudes to people from different backgrounds, be enabled or encouraged to take action on different issues affecting their lives, and even as well as taking action, think critically, talk critically, debate, to find a voice, to experiment with taking different action. So I think youth work has a great impact. Okay. And I do think it's important that we maybe avoid the most obvious kind of answers to outcomes, such as, confidence, self-esteem, things that are very easily measurable. We might use those. We might look at those outcomes, but we might also think, well, what is it we're trying to do here? I think one really important way to evidence outcomes is speaking with young people who are currently using youth settings. And I think speaking with people who have used youth work settings in the past, finding out from them what they think the impact was on their lives. I know I've been moved and even surprised sometimes by speaking with young people about what they feel they've got. And then I think to do that in a critical way, to have a critical conversation where we're maybe asking beyond the obvious. I've had young people saying to me, well, coming here, it keeps me off the streets. And then we've ended up talking about, well, should young people be off the streets? And I've understood from them why they might see being on the streets as risky and troublesome. But we might also talk about, well, would it be a better world if young people could safely, creatively be on the streets and be part of public life? So, yeah, a conversation, a dialogue, and that can be done informally, and it can be done formally through interviews, through focus groups with young people, through bringing researchers in to work with the youth workers. So it's not just the practitioners having to shoulder that burden on their own. I think practitioners telling stories as well is a really good idea, critically unpicking what they do. We have a method in defence of youth work called storytelling in youth work, where we get together as groups of practitioners to tell stories, but then to really debate and reflect on what is the meaning of those stories. What was the process? What's special about youth work that enabled us to have that impact? And then I think there's a lot of creative methods that can be used in evaluation. And I think this is it's a really exciting area to be thinking about right now. How do we evaluate? And maybe, again, trying to avoid the kind of easy, the tick box, the ways that are maybe not the best way to represent youth work. They can sometimes get us distracted. Occasionally we might need to do them for the funders, but if we don't need to do them, if the funder is saying, how will you evaluate? Let's think, well, what's going to work here for us, rather than just think, oh, I expect they want to hear about some kind of validated tool. If they haven't said that, let's actually empower ourselves to come up with something alternative that's meaningful, that helps our practice, that helps our work. I've got two elements of advice for youth workers at the moment, and the first and most important is probably to come together with other youth workers, maybe if possible outside of a high stakes environment of we've got to produce something, what are we going to do? But maybe in a university course, maybe just in a cafe or something, to discuss what is it we're doing and how could we really evaluate it. And then I think the other thing is speaking with young people. What would they like to do? Would they like to, make a film about the benefit of youth work? Do they want to do make a poster about it? Would they like to speak with youth workers? Would they like to fill out a questionnaire? And sometimes for young people, questionnaires are a really interesting method to use. So I think that's probably my advice. And to think about what is special about youth work and how can we enhance that through our evaluation rather than kind of going against our practice.
We analyze and evaluate our work by talking to the kids about what they've learned. And then me and my colleagues, we talk to each other about what we've learned. And then we put those two documentations together and have like an overall view of what we can do better, what we're good at. We evaluate our work by using documentation in our logbook through our national network called KICS. We hand out questionnaires to all our visitors. And every evening when we close, me and my colleagues sit down and talk about what happened throughout the evening, what went well, what went not so well, what can we do to get better. If there's something specific that we need to take a close look at, we use our documentation system to evaluate our work. Once a year, we have all our visitors fill out a questionnaire through also a logbook in KICS, where they have the opportunity to tell us what they think about our work. And they have the opportunity to evaluate what we do. And then when we have the results, we go through the results. And if we find something that they think that we need to work at, then we do our job and work at it and make it better so we can be better. The hardest part with working with evaluations with my colleagues can be that we can look at the same situation through 5 different perspectives. And our job is to fuse them together and to come to a solution or a way to change something. But the hardest part, I think, is seeing it through different perspectives.
Of course, you need to evaluate the impact or results of youth work, but how to do it, it's really different approaches. We don't have this kind of agreement in youth sector as it is in formal education. We don't put marks for youngsters and so on. But we have developed this kind of system that actually is based on the values or let's say youth work itself. And one example is to gather stories for young people. What have changed in their lives during this period when they have participated in youth work. And our colleagues from UK have provided us, or we were glad to participate in one youth work impact assessment project, and we were piloting this method last 3 years maybe. So there is also scientific part. It's not. Its method is basically storytelling, and it's almost like a narrative analysis. So there is a youth worker who is providing this kind of background information for this story. There is analysis in youth workers group where they are dividing those stories in certain categories, and there is also a stakeholders group that will select the most significant story. But the idea is about reflection of youth work, and results, and because of this categorization, we can see what are the most common results of youth work. For example, is it social skills that youngsters are learning through youth work? Do they have more concrete skills, for example, from different hobby activities? Is it better relations with adults? Is it something else? So this is the issue about reflection, about outcomes or results of youth work. But of course, you can set different quality criteria. I mean, it depends on the goals. So at first, you have to set some kind of goals that you want to achieve, and then, of course, you have to assess how well you have achieved those goals. So there is no one concrete tool that will answer all those different questions, but you need to have variety of tools and ideas and approaches which eventually will support different youth work organizations, setups, and so on.